Imagine waking up one morning in the year 1700. No electricity, no factories, no engines, no mass production. Almost everything you use, clothes, tools, food, is made by hand, slowly, locally, and in small quantities. Now, imagine waking up 250 years later. You hold a smartphone made using minerals from Africa, designed in America, assembled in China, and shipped across oceans in days. You live inside a global system so complex that even governments struggle to control it. This transformation did not happen gradually. It happened because of one explosive turning point in human history, the Industrial Revolution. This video is not just about machines and factories. It is about power. It explains why some nations became rich, some were left behind, why America dominated the 20th century, why China dominates manufacturing today, and why the US-China rivalry is not accidental but historical. To understand today's world, we must go back to the moment when history changed speed. To understand what machines changed, we must first return to the world that existed without them. A world built by hands, animals, and nature itself. Before the Industrial Revolution, the world moved at a pace that feels almost unimaginable today. For thousands of years, not decades, not centuries, but millennia, human life followed nearly the same rhythm. A person born in 1200 lived almost exactly like a person born in 1700. The tools were similar. The work was similar. The limits of production were the same. Most people were farmers. Even those who lived in towns depended directly on agriculture. Seasons controlled life. A bad harvest could mean hunger or death. There were no food surpluses large enough to protect entire populations from nature's moods. Everything was made by hand. Clothes were spun thread by thread. A single shirt could take weeks of labor. Shoes were repaired again and again because replacing them was expensive. Tools were precious. Nothing was disposable. If you wanted a table, a carpenter made it slowly. If you wanted metal tools, a blacksmith shaped each piece individually. Production was local, small scale, and deeply human. This meant one critical thing. No society could suddenly increase production. Even kings and emperors were constrained by this reality. Power before machines came from land, taxes, and manpower. Armies were large, but slow. Soldiers marched on foot. Horses needed food. Supply lines were fragile. A single winter could destroy an invasion. Empires existed. The Mughal Empire in India, the Ottoman Empire, Imperial China, European kingdoms, but all of them faced natural limits. Expansion was difficult. Control was fragile. Rebellions were constant. Weapons were handmade. Cannons took time to cast. Muskets were inaccurate and slow to reload. Losing an army was devastating because replacing it could take years. In this world, power was balanced by slowness. No ruler could dominate the entire planet. Trade existed, but it was limited. Ships relied on wind. A journey across oceans took months and carried enormous risk. News itself moved slowly. Decisions were made with incomplete information. This is why history before the Industrial Revolution feels calm, even when it was violent. Change happened, but slowly. Then, quietly at first, something revolutionary began. Humans discover how to replace muscle, human and animal, with machines powered by fuel. This was not just a technical change. It was a civilizational shock. The moment machines entered production, all the old limits of history began to break. And once those limits broke, the world you and I live in became inevitable. The Industrial Revolution did not improve the old system. It replaced it. Machines turned time, labor, and energy into mass power. The Industrial Revolution did not arrive like a thunderstorm. At first, it felt small, almost invisible. A few machines in workshops, a new way to pump water from mines, a strange engine that burned coal and moved pistons. But slowly, this quiet change became the loudest explosion in human history. Britain was the place where everything came together. It was not destiny or genius alone. It was conditions. Britain had large coal reserves close to the surface. Coal meant cheap energy. Energy meant power. Britain had money flowing in from trade and colonies. That money could be invested in experiments. Britain had political stability. Inventors were protected. Profits could be kept. And Britain had a culture that encouraged practical science, not just ideas, but machines that worked. Then came the steam engine. For the first time, humans were no longer dependent history's old limits: muscle, wind, and water. A steam engine worked day and night. It didn't get tired. It didn't demand food. It only demanded fuel. One machine could now do the work of dozens, sometimes hundreds, of people. Textile production exploded. Iron production soared. Factories replaced homes as centers of work. This changed daily life completely. People left villages and flooded into cities. Families were broken apart by factory schedules. Time itself changed: clocks, shifts, deadlines. Life became harder for many, richer for a few. But one truth became undeniable. Societies with machines became unstoppable. Industrial power was not just economic. It was strategic. Machines did more than increase production. They decided who would rule and who would fall behind. Once machines entered production, global power tilted violently. Industrial countries could now produce weapons in massive quantities, ships faster than rivals, supplies continuously. This changed war, trade, and domination. Earlier, empires expanded slowly. Now expansion became fast and brutal. Steamships ignored wind. Railways allowed control deep inside territories. Factories replaced artisans in colonized lands. This is how colonial empires truly formed. India's traditional industries collapsed under cheap British factory goods. African regions were reorganized around resource extraction. China suffered the deepest psychological wound. For centuries, China had been technologically advanced, but it missed the industrial shift. When industrial powers arrived, China could not resist. The Opium Wars were not moral failures. They were mechanical failures. When people say China suffered the deepest psychological wound, it sounds heavy. But don't worry, this is actually a very simple idea. Stay with me, I'll explain it step by step. For centuries, China did not see itself as just another country. China saw itself as the center of civilization. In fact, the Chinese name for China is Zhonghua, the Middle Kingdom. This was not arrogance. It was historical experience. Let's go back in time. China before the Industrial Revolution. For most of recorded history, China was ahead of the world. Let's understand this clearly. China invented paper, printing, gunpowder, the compass, advanced iron casting, complex irrigation systems. While Europe was still fragmented into small kingdoms, China had a centralized bureaucracy, written exams for government officials, massive cities, stable food production. Chinese ships sailed long before European exploration peaked. Chinese silk, porcelain, and tea were luxury items across the world. So in China's mind, we are not backward. Others come to us to learn and trade. This is where the story turns. This is the fatal missed shift. But history does not reward past achievements. While China perfected traditional mastery, Europe shifted to mechanical thinking. China focused on skilled artisans, manual production, Confucian stability. Europe focused on machines, energy, productivity. China did not industrialize, not because of stupidity, but because its system valued stability over disruption. Its elite saw machines as unnecessary. Its economy already worked in old terms. This delay was invisible at first, but when the world changed, it changed fast. China didn't meet merchants or missionaries first. It met machines. This was the arrival of industrial powers. When Britain arrived in China in the 19th century, this was not a meeting of equals. Britain came with steam-powered ships, mass-produced weapons, industrial logistics. China responded with wooden ships, handmade weapons, traditional armies. This was not a cultural clash. It was a mechanical mismatch. So what do we actually mean by this? What were the Opium Wars, and why do they matter here? Let's break it down. Let's explain this with a very simple example. Imagine one fighter has a modern automatic rifle. The other has a handmade sword. No matter how brave or skilled the swordsman is, the outcome is already decided. That was the Opium Wars. British steamships ignored wind patterns. British cannons fired faster and farther. British supply chains replaced losses easily. China's soldiers fought bravely. But bravery cannot defeat industrial production. So when China lost, it was not because Chinese people were weak. Chinese culture was inferior. It was because China was fighting an industrial war with a pre-industrial system. China learned a painful lesson. In the modern world, dignity follows industrial strength. That memory still drives China today. Industrial power did not stay confined to a few nations. It spread outward, reshaping trade, labor, and lives across the entire planet. The Industrial Revolution did not remain a British secret for long. Other nations were watching very carefully. They saw Britain's factories. They saw its wealth. They saw its power. And they understood one simple truth. Whoever masters machines masters the future. Some countries try to copy, but move slowly. Others faced political instability. Some lacked resources. But one nation learned faster than all the rest. The United States of America. America was uniquely positioned for industrial expansion. It had vast land. It had enormous natural resources, coal, iron, oil. And most importantly, it had a constant flow of immigrants. Millions arrived with nothing but labor, ambition, and desperation. Factories absorbed them. Cities expanded. America did not need to invent everything. It borrowed British and European machines. Then it scaled them beyond imagination. Factories became larger than entire towns. Production was standardized. Parts were interchangeable. This meant something revolutionary. If one part broke, it could be replaced instantly. Production no longer depended on skilled artisans. It depended on systems. Then came the most important organizational breakthrough of all, the assembly line. Henry Ford did not invent the car. He did not invent machines. He invented a way to organize human labor around machines. Instead of workers moving to the product moved to the worker. Each worker repeated one small task. Again and again. Efficiency exploded. Cost collapsed. A car that was once a luxury became affordable. America could now produce more, faster, cheaper than any nation on earth. This industrial capacity soon faced the ultimate test. World War I. The war showed that modern conflict was no longer about bravery alone. It was about factories. Who could produce more rifles? More shells? More food? The answer was clear. World War II removed all doubt. America became the arsenal of democracy. While others fought on their soil, America produced planes, tanks, ships, food, fuel. Factories ran day and night. By the time the war ended, Europe was shattered. Cities were destroyed. Factories lay in ruins. America, protected by oceans, stood untouched. It held the world's strongest industrial base. It controlled finance. It controlled production. For the first time in history, a single nation stood at the center of the global system. The industrial age now spoke with an American accent. Industrial leadership won the wars. But what followed was bigger. The world's economy was redesigned around American power. When World War II ended, the world stood in ruins. Europe was shattered. Japan was devastated. Factories, railways, and cities lay broken. Only one major industrial power emerged, not just intact, but stronger than ever. The United States of America. At this moment, America faced a historic choice. It could rule the world the old way, like past empires, through direct control, colonies, and occupation. If you want to understand how old empires ruled, watch my previous videos, link in the description. Or America could do something entirely new. It could design a system. America chose the system. Instead of flags and governors, it used rules, institutions, and money. The US dollar became the backbone of the global economy. Why? Because America held most of the world's gold. Because its economy was stable. Because its factories could supply the world. Countries began trading in dollars. Central banks began storing dollars. The dollar became global money. Alongside this, America helped create institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. On the surface, these institutions promised stability and development. In reality, they also ensured that global finance followed American-designed rules. Trade barriers were reduced. Markets were opened. Capital flowed freely. This triggered an economic explosion. Manufacturing boomed. Consumption exploded. In the 1950s and 1960s, America produced almost everything it consumed. Cars, refrigerators, washing machines, televisions. Factories ran at full capacity. Take a simple example. A middle-class American family after World War II could suddenly afford a car, a house, household appliances. This had never happened before in history. Mass production meant mass consumption. Factories paid good wages. Workers spent those wages. Businesses expanded. This created a powerful feedback loop. America became both the world's biggest producer and biggest consumer. But success created new problems. As living standards rose, wages rose. American workers demanded higher pay. Regulations increased. Costs climbed. For companies, production became expensive. That's when a quiet shift began. Slowly, factories moved abroad. At first, factories moved to nearby allies. Japan, South Korea, West Germany. Later, they moved further. Mexico, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, and eventually China. Why? Cheaper labor, fewer regulations, large, disciplined workforces. An American company could design a product at home, manufacture it abroad, and sell it back to American consumers at higher profit. This became the new model. America no longer needed to make everything. Instead, it focused on controlling the most powerful parts of the system. America kept finance. Real example, Wall Street became the center of global finance. Major banks, stock markets, investment funds. If a company in Asia wanted investment, it often went through New York. Oil was priced in dollars. Global loans were issued in dollars. This meant, even when goods were made abroad, money flowed through American financial channels. America kept technology. Another example, American companies dominated high-value innovation. Silicon Valley became the global hub for technology. Microchips, software, operating systems. Even when products were assembled overseas, the core technology was American. An iPhone is a perfect example. Designed in California, powered by American software, assembled in China. The highest profits stayed in America. America kept military dominance. While factories moved abroad, military power did not. America built a global network of bases. Europe, Asia, Middle East. Its navy controlled sea lanes. Its air force dominated the skies. This military dominance protected trade routes, energy supplies, and allies. No other nation could challenge it directly, but production was outsourced. Here lies the hidden weakness. By outsourcing manufacturing, America did not just move factories. It moved knowledge. Factories are not only places where goods are produced. They are places where people learn how systems actually work. Inside a factory, workers and engineers learn how machines break and how to fix them, how to improve efficiency, how to manage supply chains, how to coordinate thousands of parts into one product. This knowledge cannot be learned only from books. It is learned by doing every day. When America outsourced manufacturing, it outsourced this learning process. Let's look at a real example. Example 1, consumer electronics. In the 1980s and 1990s, American companies designed electronics, televisions, radios, computers, but manufacturing increasingly moved to East Asia. At first, this looked harmless. America still owned the brands. America still earned profits. But over time, something important happened. Asian factories did not just assemble products. They learned how to improve manufacturing speed, reduce defects, miniaturize components, manage ultra-complex supply chains. Engineers in these factories gained hands-on mastery. Meanwhile, American workers and engineers stopped getting that experience. The result? Eventually, countries like Japan, South Korea, and later China began designing their own products. Sony, Samsung, Huawei. What started as assembly turned into innovation. Example 2. Semiconductors. Microchips are the brain of modern technology. America once dominated every step: design, manufacturing, and equipment. Over time, chip manufacturing moved abroad, especially to Taiwan and South Korea. Companies like TSMC mastered the extremely complex process of making advanced chips. Today, even American tech giants depend on foreign factories for the most advanced semiconductors. This is not a small dependency. Modern cars, smartphones, weapon systems, and data centers all rely on these chips. When supply is disrupted, entire industries stop. Example 3. Supply chain shock. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed this hidden weakness clearly. When factories in Asia shut down, American shelves emptied. Car manufacturers could not get parts. Electronics were delayed. Medical equipment was scarce. America realized it could not quickly replace what it no longer produced. Supply chains had become long, fragile, and tightly optimized, but not resilient. For decades, this weakness remained invisible because the system delivered prosperity. Goods were cheap, inflation was low, consumers were happy. But beneath the surface, dependency was growing. Skills accumulated abroad. Manufacturing ecosystems matured outside America. By the time the cracks appeared, reversing the process became extremely difficult. Rebuilding factories is not just about money. It requires trained workers, suppliers, infrastructure, time. This is the real cost of outsourcing. The system worked until it didn't. And this realization marks the beginning of the next chapter of global history. For decades, the system seemed settled. Then a civilization with a long memory stepped back onto the stage. China. China did not rush blindly into globalization. It watched the world very carefully. Chinese leaders studied history. They studied Britain's rise. They studied America's system. And most importantly, they studied their own past failures. China remembered the humiliation of the 19th and early 20th centuries, when industrial powers dominated it. The lesson was clear: never fall behind in production again. So China chose patience. It observed. It learned. It planned. 1978, the turning point. In 1978, China made a historic decision. It opened its doors to the world. But this opening was not surrender. It was strategy. Foreign companies were welcomed, but under conditions. China offered extremely cheap labor, massive land availability, government support. In return, China gained factories, technology exposure, managerial know-how. Special economic zones like Shenzhen were created. Shenzhen was once a fishing village. Within a few decades, it became a manufacturing megacity. This was not accidental. China used foreign investment as a classroom. Factories multiplied. Learning accelerated. Western companies believed they were simply outsourcing cheap labor. China was doing something else. It was absorbing knowledge. Workers learned how machines worked. Engineers learned how production systems were optimized. Managers learned logistics and scale. China did not just assemble. It studied every step. To understand how this shift works in real life, look at one industry: electronics manufacturing. In the 1990s and early 2000s, China became the global center for electronics assembly. Companies like Foxconn assembled products for Apple, Dell, HP, and others. At first, China only assembled parts. But over time, Chinese engineers improved efficiency. Supply chains became localized. Component manufacturing moved closer. Eventually, entire ecosystems formed. This meant China could now build complete products, not just assemble them. Infrastructure as a weapon. China did something few countries dared to do. It built infrastructure before demand. Ports, highways, high-speed rail, power grids. This lowered costs and increased speed. Factories could move goods faster than anywhere else on Earth. A product could be designed, sourced, assembled, and shipped within days, not weeks. Production at scale became China's natural advantage. And this is where a critical realization appears. What Britain experienced in the 18th century, what America experienced in the early 20th century, China is experiencing now. This is China's version of the Industrial Revolution, not powered by steam engines but by infrastructure, electricity, automation, logistics, digital coordination. Just like earlier industrial revolutions, it is reshaping global power. Countries that once depended on China for cheap labor now depend on it for speed, scale, and reliability. This is not just manufacturing. It is industrial dominance in the modern age. And history tells us what usually follows when one nation reaches this stage: climbing the value chain. China followed a clear path. First, toys and textiles. Then, electronics and appliances. Then, machinery and industrial equipment. Then, advanced technology. This was not random. It was policy-driven. Education expanded. Engineering was prioritized. Research funding increased. Real example, high-speed rail. China once imported train technology. Today, it designs and builds the world's largest high-speed rail network. It exports this technology globally. Learning turned into leadership. Let's look at a recent, real-world example. Electric vehicles. In the last decade, China has become the world's largest producer of electric vehicles. Companies like BYD moved from battery manufacturing to full vehicle production. China controls large parts of battery supply chains, rare earth processing, EV manufacturing scale. This did not happen overnight. It was the result of decades of industrial learning. The world woke up late. For years, the world believed China would remain a low-cost workshop. That belief was wrong. China was not just assembling products. It was mastering production. And once a nation masters production at scale, it gains something far more powerful than cheap labor. It gains leverage. That realization has now reached the rest of the world, and it has changed everything. Two powers now operate inside the same system. One built it, the other learned to master it. Collision was no longer a question of if, but when. What we see today is not a sudden conflict. It is historical gravity. When one dominant power rises, a challenger almost always follows. In the 19th century, Britain faced Germany. In the 20th century, Britain faced the United States. Today, China challenges America, not by militarily invading foreign lands, but by competing for technology, supply chains, energy, and data. In the past, empires fought over territory, colonies, raw materials. Today, the battlefield has shifted. The new battlefield is technology, supply chains, energy systems, data, and standards. This is why modern conflict looks confusing. There are no world wars, no global invasions. Instead, we see export bans, sanctions, chip restrictions, investment controls, tech blacklists. These are economic weapons. If oil powered the 20th century, semiconductors power the 21st. Every modern system depends on chips. Smartphones, cars, factories, satellites, AI models, homicide, financial markets. Without advanced chips, nothing modern functions. That is why semiconductors have replaced cannons. When the US restricted advanced chip exports to China, it wasn't about business. It was about slowing China's climb up the technological ladder. At the same time, China poured massive state funding into domestic chip production. Not because it was cheap, but because dependence is vulnerability. This is industrial warfare without gunfire. In the past, power came from machines and assembly lines. Today, it comes from algorithms and data. AI is the new factory floor. In the Industrial Revolution, whoever controlled factories controlled wealth. Today, AI is the factory. AI decides how efficiently factories run, how logistics are optimized, how financial markets react, how military systems make decisions. This is why AI leadership matters so much. America still leads in advanced AI research and foundational models. China leads in scale, deployment, and integration. I'm explaining this in a very simple way, so stay with me. By the end, It will completely change how you see this. America leads in advanced AI research and foundational models. China leads in scale, deployment, and integration. At first, this sounds complicated, but it's actually very simple. Think of artificial intelligence the way people once thought about electricity during the Industrial Revolution. Some countries invented the generator. Other countries wired the entire nation. Both were powerful, but they were powerful in different ways. Today, America focuses on inventing the generator. China focuses on connecting everything to it. Let's understand what that really means. Artificial intelligence begins with something called foundational models. These are the core brains of AI. Everything else is built on top of them. They are extremely expensive to create, trained using massive computing power, used as the base for thousands of other tools and applications. When you use ChatGPT, advanced image generators, cutting-edge AI research tools, you're interacting with these foundational models. They don't appear overnight. They require top scientists, the most advanced computer chips, years of research, enormous financial investment. Training just one advanced AI model can cost billions of dollars. Only a handful of organizations on Earth can afford that. This is why America leads here. America dominates. Elite research universities, venture capital funding, advanced chip design, frontier experimentation. This is like inventing the steam engine in the 1700s. Few nations could do it, but those who did shaped the world. That is America's strength. According AI breakthroughs, new architectures, experimental intelligence. America builds what has never existed before. There's a crucial difference most people miss: inventing something and simply using it. But here's the crucial truth of history. Inventing something does not automatically mean using it everywhere. Innovation and dominance are not the same thing. This is where China's story begins. America asks, can we build the smartest AI in the world? China asks, how do we put AI into everything? There's one advantage that changes everything: scale. China's natural advantage. Scale means how many factories, how many cities, how many users, how much real-world data. China has thousands of industrial zones, massive urban populations, centralized planning, extremely fast infrastructure rollout. This gives China something rare: the ability to test technology across an entire nation. In China today, AI controls traffic lights in major cities. Factories use AI to optimize production in real time. Ports use AI to manage millions of containers. Logistics companies route deliveries automatically. This is not experimental. It is not a pilot project. It is nationwide. Imagine testing a machine in one laboratory. Now imagine testing it across hundreds of cities at once. That is scale. Innovation isn't the finish line. Turning ideas into everyday reality is. That's deployment. Deployment means speed. How fast does an idea move from laboratory, factory, street, citizen? China moves extremely fast here. If an AI system improves factory efficiency, energy usage, traffic flow, it can be approved, installed, scaled within months, not years. Why? Because factories are clustered together. Government and industry coordinate. Infrastructure is already in place. This mirrors an earlier moment in history. America did not invent every machine, but America mastered the assembly line. It organized machines into systems. Today, China is doing the same thing, but with artificial intelligence. When you stop noticing AI, it has already won. That's integration. This is the most important part. Integration means AI is no longer a separate tool. It becomes invisible infrastructure. In China, AI is embedded into manufacturing, finance, logistics, surveillance, healthcare, city planning. In many factories, AI predicts machine failure. AI schedules workers. AI ajuste power usage. AI manages supply deliveries. Workers don't use AI consciously. They live inside a system shaped by it. Just like electricity, you don't wake up and think, I'm using electricity. You simply live in a world built around it. That is integration. This difference decides the future. Here's why it matters. So we now see two kinds of power. America's strength, creating the next breakthrough, defining what is possible. China's strength, turning technology into industrial dominance, making it cheap, fast, and everywhere. History has seen this before. Britain invented machines. America scaled them. Now, America invents AI minds. China industrializes AI at civilization scale. America builds the mind of the machine. China builds the body around it. And the future will be shaped by how those two forces collide. Two different strengths. One unavoidable collision. AI is not replacing humans. It is replacing entire systems of decision-making. That makes it geopolitical. The Industrial Revolution reshaped humanity. It created immense wealth. It created deep inequality. It built empires and destroyed others. The world you live in today is still running on that same logic. Factories became systems. Systems became power. And now, the next revolution is already unfolding. Quietly, globally, relentlessly. History reminds us of one enduring truth. Power always follows production. The story is not finished. It is still being written right now. And every one of us is living inside its consequences. If you want to understand how history shapes the present and how the present is shaping the future, then stay with this channel. Subscribe to GeoHistory Newsfeed because this story is far from over.